Welcome to your Sunday night edition of Fantasy Football Today. What's up, everybody? Adam Azer with Heath Cummings and Dave Richard recapping Fantasy Week 4. You know, last week it was so easy. It was the Dolphins, specifically Devon Achane, at that point it was Devon Achane, who had another big game. What's the big storyline? What's the big headline? Heath, write the headline for Week 4.
I mean, it's just CBS Fantasy on top of the world. The start of the week is boom, 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 boom. It's game of the week, just fireworks all over the place. The Anthony Richardson podcast of 2023, and he is a super duper star. You got Jalen Warren's already pulled even with Najee Harris, if not passing him. Things are looking great.
Okay, let's sift through that for a second here, because I understand you made fun of me, I think, on 2 of those 3.
No, I didn't make fun of you on any of those.
3 of those 4.
No, here's the thing. And this is, I mean, no offense by this at all. But I don't think that the accuracy of the podcast is being judged by your takes. You are the greatest male host in the history of podcasts. But we were the Anthony Richardson podcast.
Oh,
like
yeah.
The 3 analysts were all extremely ahead of the industry on Anthony Richardson.
Yes, and you deserve a lot of credit for that. I thought we were going to have a much different Anthony Richardson conversation at halftime of that game, but what a second half he had. But what was the Jalen Warren thing?
He had to think of something to say about me.
No, I think he literally had the same number of points as Najee Harris today.
Oh, well, he's outscored him every week in PPR until this week.
Right, yeah.
But he hasn't passed them.
Winner.
Yay, a Steeler player. Yay.
You know what?
There's been one good play by the Steelers this year.
Yeah.
Like maybe you count the touchdowns for Pat Freiermuth, but what a mess that offense has turned out to be.
Who could have guessed it?
Dave, what's your headline?
It's more injuries that are going to pull our hair out and make us frustrated as fantasy managers, because we're not going to have a lot of the guys that we thought we would have to be useful and potential studs for our fantasy team. We lost Mike Evans. We don't know how long we don't know how long any of these guys are going to be out for, but Evans, T. Higgins, Freiermuth, I already mentioned him. Javonte Williams had a hip injury. Not only is he out, he might have been replaced by Jaleel McLaughlin. He's building a mystery on that Denver offense. It's a mystery how the Broncos came back to beat the Bears. Kenny Pickett's out. That means Mitchell Trubisky might end up being the Steelers quarterback moving forward. That can't be a good thing for that offense, or maybe it could be. And we had a lot of other injuries that, players that came back. There was Adam Thielen. There was John Dotson. Matthew Stafford finished the game limping. Devontae Adams left and came back. Just a mess with all these frustrating injuries, and it's never going to stop. And we're going to get to week 17, and we're going to be starting players from the USFL, hoping that they help us win a championship.
Dave, where is the positivity, man? The chat's just overflowing with positivity, and I think we're also the Puka podcast, thanks to Jacob Gibbs. So, everything is fantastic.
Yeah, and honestly, I didn't really think it was that bad of an injury week. I mean, they're going to have injuries. Really, you're going to have injuries every week, right? Like T. Higgins, I don't want to start T. Higgins at all. So, I mean, I hope he's fine. Like, I don't want to be insensitive. I hope everybody's doing okay. But actually, one of the good things about the injuries is that a lot of the guys who got hurt today have buys coming up. So the Steelers, for example, Freiermuth and Pickett, they both have Baltimore next week and then a bye. Javonte does not have a bye coming up. Higgins, it's not too far. 2 games and then a bye. And then like Deshaun Watson didn't play today. He's got a bye next week. He's expected to be back after the bye. To me, the storyline today is the stars were shining. Christian McCaffrey, a 4-touchdown game. Josh Allen to Stephon Diggs. A.J. Brown was awesome. Justin Fields at the start of the week. I sent Jamie a text, and I can only imagine what his emotions were throughout.
I can tell you.
Well, not that. But I said to him, and like, who wants to get a text like this on Sunday? I said, I know you're busy, but I need a huge favor if you have a second. And like any of you would be like, are you kidding me? It's Sunday right now during the game. And he said, sure. And I said, can you make Trevor Lawrence the start of the week next week? Would really help my teams. We had a lot about it. But JB's on fire with 4 straight terrific calls. All right, anyway, let's get to our biggest winners and biggest losers. Heath, since you're Mr. Positive, give me your, your biggest win. Pharmacy down the street from me is the biggest winner right now.
Yeah, I mean, there's relativity to all these winners, but I'm going with the biggest winner was Devon Achane. Last week was no fluke. I think he actually I know he had more snaps in this game than Raheem Mostert, believe he had more carries in this game than Raheem Mostert. Certainly performed a lot better than Raheem Mostert. Moving forward, I will rank Devon Achane as the number 1 running back for the Miami Dolphins. He is a super duper star.
He's so fast. It's amazing how quickly he can just go after he gets the ball. He played 66% of the snaps, 7 of 13 third and fourth downs, all 6 of their snaps inside the 10. A decision was made by that coaching staff this week to get Achane even more involved than last week. And I think he could end up being a very nice league winner for fantasy managers.
Well, Mostert did something twice that Achane didn't do. By the way, we have a swear jar for every time mispronunciation jar for Achane.
I think we've decided that this is like the Kamara one.
Okay.
I don't think so.
Say Achane because there is, I believe, actual video evidence of him requesting for it to be Achane and Achane at different points in his life. And so I'm just kind of throwing my hands up in the air on this one. I might say either one. Achane.
Yeah. Well, anyway, Mostert did fumble twice, but they look this carries the touches. I think it was one more touch for Achane. Achane. So hopefully both involved going forward. Dave, who's your biggest winner?
I'm going to go with Nico Collins, who stepped up in a major way for the Texans. This was not an easy matchup for Houston. At least it didn't look that way coming in. That offensive line beat up Steelers defense. They've done a good job getting after the quarterback, and the Texans handled it. And Nico Collins handled the Pittsburgh Steelers quite nicely. I believe it's his 3rd game of the year with at least 9 targets. I don't know what happened in week 3 where he didn't get a lot of targets against Jacksonville. I don't even know if it's worth looking into, because in every other game that he's played, he's been very nice for fantasy, at least 14 PPR points. Other than that game against Jacksonville in week 3, I think you can feel good about starting Nico Collins moving forward.
Yeah, 7 catches, 168 yards, 2 touchdowns. Just terrific game for Nico Collins. Our biggest losers, Dave. Who's the biggest loser this week?
So, I hate that I've got to bring this guy up because this was one of Heath's guys, but I'm losing confidence in Miles Sanders as a reliable starter in fantasy. And I don't know how much of it is on Miles Sanders. I think a lot of it is just on the Panthers being a really, really bad team. And as they fell behind against Minnesota, Chuba Hubbard played more snaps. He's certainly been the guy playing more on 3rd and 4th downs. And even Hubbard had a bunch of snaps inside the 10. Sanders had an edge there, but it was 4-3 on 7 snaps inside the 10. And are we at the point now with Miles Sanders where he's a touchdown or bust type of fantasy running back? Well, that would make me a little bit nervous too, considering he's got Detroit next. Then they're at Miami. That's a game they could fall behind him pretty quickly. Then a bye. And then Houston. Maybe that's not such a bad matchup. I don't know. As Steelers. Colts after that. And then the Bears in week 10. So you might not feel good starting Miles Sanders until week 10. Is that where we're at with him? I'm very nervous.
I think Miguel nailed it because the split in touches we saw this week resembled more the split in touches that we saw week 1. Sanders was on the injury report with a groin injury all preseason and week 1. He was on the injury report, didn't practice Friday, I don't think, with a groin injury. There was a report this morning from Ian Rappaport said no issues. I just don't believe that was the case. I don't think Miles Sanders was completely healthy.
Then why play him?
Well, they're trying to win games, and they paid him $16 or $17 million guaranteed. They think he's really good.
If he was close enough to being healthy, they should have played him, and that's my guess is that they did. So I don't know if we can blame it on the groin injury being what shut him down. I'll go back and watch him. I think he deserves at least that much.
I don't think he looked like himself today.
Well, when did he last look like himself?
He made a couple of good plays last week in the passing game. And I said last week, maybe he's a sell high, and maybe he is, but also like that schedule you said after the bye sounded pretty appealing. So I'm probably going to hold on.
All right. Well, he did have 3 more catches today. So that's at least 3 catches in every game for Miles Sanders. That's the
Do you want to hear who he plays after Chicago? Just look it up for yourself. I'm not going to tell you now. I don't want to spoil it for you. Just what's coming after the Bears game in week 10, which is like, it feels like it's a million years away.
I think everyone Tennessee. Okay. So Heath, who's your biggest loser?
The Bengals. Undoubtedly. What a disaster to face that secondary and have that poor of a day passing. T. Higgins maybe lost for a while with a rib injury. Burrow's not okay. There's no way I don't think you can consider starting Joe Burrow for the next 3 weeks. And so it can't be great for Joe Mixon. Like, he had a good efficient day today, but only had 1 target. I don't know how Joe Burrow can't throw the ball more than 10 yards downfield accurately, and Joe Mixon gets 1 target. But that's the state of this offense right now. And he tried, from what I saw, and I don't know that, like, we'll see the stats on how many seconds it was, but he tried to take deeper drops and not play that quick game so much, and Tennessee just hammered him.
His time to throw was the lowest it's been all year, 2.25.
Then he was getting hammered on that.
His ADOT was 4.6.
Oy.
Completion rate was 66.7%, but nothing was going downfield. Let's see. 6.9% of his attempts traveled 15 or more air yards. Lowest off target rate of the year. There's a positive for everybody to feel real super about with Joe Burrow. I'm with you on this one, though, because he's got 2 weeks before his bye. And then when he comes back, maybe he'll be healthy, but it's the 49ers. It's the Bills. Those are his first 2 games after the bye.
The 49ers, no trouble for Josh Dobbs.
Yeah, that's true. Look, if Burrow is himself, you'll start him in those games. It doesn't matter the opponent.
How will you know?
You won't. And that's part of the problem. You've got to find another quarterback if you've got Burrow.
He practiced in full all week. He's awesome. Yeah.
They might want to do some different things in practice.
All right. And so those are some of our biggest winners and biggest losers. Live stream tomorrow night, Monday night at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. I will not be on that. So I apologize, but it'll be great nonetheless. And yeah, you know our schedule. We have a lot of other podcasts, cbssports.com/podcast. Pretty much any sport you want to hear about, we've got you covered. Buy or sell I'm sorry I'm stealing some of Heath's losers edition. Buy or sell, Dallas Goedert is a bust. 2 catches for 25 yards. So that is 0, 22, 41, and 25 yards. No touchdowns in 4 games. Buy or sell, Dallas Goedert is a bust. Sorry, let me clarify. Obviously, he's been a bust so far, but at the end of the season, Dallas Goedert will be a bust. Buy or sell?
I think it's too early to say that, because this position is so bad that a 50-yard game with 2 touchdowns could make Dallas Goedert a top 10 tight end for the season. So it's really discouraging, but I'm not ready to say. I just don't think the position itself is good enough to where we can say that for sure yet.
His last game with 11 or more PPR points was in week 9 of last year.
That's a while.
It's been a while since he's been able to come through with a really good game. I think Heath's right that, if you get 10 PPR points from your tight end, can you really complain? I don't think you can. But what if I'm only getting 4 or 5 non-PPR points from my tight end? Can I complain then? And I kind of think you can. And this is another player that I think fantasy managers would be wise to just find another tight end, find somebody else to go along with it, carry 2, and start the one you feel good about from week to week. They've got the Rams in LA next week.
That's the part that I am probably going to be different on. Like, I can't think of anything that sounds less appealing than carrying 2 tight ends that I don't think are any good and choosing which one to start every week. I would rather just have an extra running back or wide receiver on my roster and just keep starting the same crappy guy. And when he gets a touchdown, yay. And when he doesn't, oh well. And for whatever it's worth, Dallas Goedert did have 2 games out of 3 in the playoffs with more than 11 PPR fantasy points.
Okay, that's a fair point.
Yeah. All right. I mean, I it's funny. It's like Dallas Goedert and Kyle Pitts have both been so bad. For some reason, I feel a lot better about Dallas Goedert. I suppose a Taylor
offense. That's why.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. That's exactly what it is. Pitts, I don't even know what to do with at this point, guys. I mean, drop Kyle Pitts.
What?
If you're like Heath and you don't want to carry 2 tight ends, someone else in your league won't be like Heath, and they'll pick up Pitts and stash him just in case. Now, listen, that could be like handing somebody in your league a grenade, and you're going to make their team worse. It's possible that happens. I'd like to see what this Falcons offense looks like with Taylor Heineke. I wonder what that might do to help Kyle Pitts out a little bit more, and Drake London. But they're like, Kyle Pitts is a big time loser. How in the world are you going to feel good starting him even against Houston in week number 5.
I
don't know how you do it. I don't know how you can do it.
I just think about the way we're maneuvering with these. Like last week, I was pretty excited about Cole Kmet, and I don't think anybody else was, and he was terrible. This week, none of us like Cole Kmet, and he's one of the best tight ends in fantasy this week. We totally missed the Hunter Henry good games. We play him 2 weeks when he stinks. I don't know.
He had 9.1 PPR points.
He did have 50 yards again. It was not terrible. I mean, I'd take that. Last thing on Pitts here. Now he has fewer than 50 yards in 13 of his last 15 games. And he has 2 touchdowns in those 15 games. Yeah. So it's becoming a pretty big sample size. All right, next one here.
Wait,
Smith
who's got more
15 and a half.
Who's got more career touchdowns, Devon Achane or Kyle Pitts?
Definitely Achane.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Buy or sell. Jerry Jeudy is a bust. It will be a bust.
Yeah.
Could be.
Buy or sell. Ramondre Stevenson will be a bust.
100%.
He was the number 1 guy on my bust list, the don't want to draft list, back in August. Yes, he's a bust. You can't. How about this? There was a report before the game that said Ezekiel, it's going to be the starter. He wasn't the starter. And if you look at the playing time, Ramondre dominated. He played like 60. I have it right here. It's 66%, 64%. Had a little edge on 3rd and 4th downs, both the snap side. This is a team that just stinks. And Ramondre isn't great. If you sat Ramondre because of the report was wrong, but your fantasy team was better off for it. This is another player you can't feel good starting next week.
It would not be hard to make the argument that they should play Zeke starter snaps with the way the first month of the season's gone.
Buy or sell. Alvin Kamara is here to ruin Chris Olave's fantasy value.
That I was actually going to say, and I felt so dumb because I was worried that they were going to ease Alvin Kamara in, and I was worried that he wouldn't be good. One of those two is right, but he was awesome for fantasy, so it didn't matter. I was going to say, believe it or not, the Saints got worse when Alvin Kamara showed up. Because if you're going to throw it to him 14 times and take targets away from Chris Olave and Michael Thomas, you were worse.
It has nothing to do with their quarterback's shoulder being messed up.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Maybe
why did he play?
Yeah, he shouldn't have.
Yeah,
I agree.
He should. I think I have a feeling they may regret that decision to let him play. He threw 37 times Derek Carr for 127 yards and 14 targets to Kamara. Do we agree that we should wait and see what happens going forward before we freak out on Olave?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And I think I had one more buy or sell. Oh, buy or sell. Joe Burrow is droppable.
Gosh, darn it. That was my believe it or not for the Bengals game. Come on, Adam Azer.
Sorry.
Well, do you believe it or not?
Eight minds.
I'm supposed to ask the questions, Dave.
Wait a minute. You're not the male host.
I don't think you should.
I don't think you should drop him either. Maybe if it's like an 8-team league and everybody's loaded, maybe you could do it then.
I don't know. I mean, this is almost exactly the moment that Justin Fields was dropped in a 10-team Superflex league that I was a part of last year.
All right, so listen, that was definitely at me. Listen, we got to take a break here. When we come back, we got all the big news you need to know. Quarterback injuries, Mike Evans, T. Higgins, and more winners and losers, and an early look at the waiver wire. We'll be right back on Fantasy Football Today. Welcome back, everybody. 8 o'clock on the dot in the Eastern time zone, and waiting for that Chiefs-Jets game to start, or at least, like 5 people are waiting for that to start. Let's get to the big news. Sorry, I got thrown off his thing about Taylor Swift. Justin Herbert was shaken up. He has an injury on his non-throwing hand. He finished the game and scored 2 rushing touchdowns to save his bacon today. But they have a bye. So again, quarterback injury, but going into a bye. Kenny Pickett left in the 4th quarter. Baltimore next week, then a bye. Mac Jones got benched for Bailey Zappi. It was a blowout, but I don't think it'll be shocking to see Mac Jones not starting next week. So we'll see what happens. In fact, by the time you hear this, you'll probably know what Bill Belichick said. And it was really riveting. Javonte Williams left in the first half with a hip injury. Mike Evans, hamstring injury. Well, he really just doesn't want to face New Orleans. T. Higgins left with fractured ribs. And Pat Freiermuth left with a hamstring injury. There was some other stuff that I have later, but Teron Armstead actually was a pretty big deal. Miami's left tackle. He just can't stay healthy. He left with a knee injury. And that's most of it. Juwan Johnson also with the calf. I have more injuries later, but an early look at the waiver wire for you guys. Who jumps out at you? Who is the big waiver wire ad? So if I'm going to piggyback off the injuries, Tyler Boyd, Jaleel McLaughlin would be names. Are they
Jaleel McLaughlin for sure? He was going to
Yes.
be one of my winners. Again, one of Sean Payton's guys popped for 72 yards on 7 carries, scored on a pass. I think he's got a lot more juice than Samaje Perine does.
He's got a lot more
maybe
juice than Javonte Williams does too.
More juice than Javonte currently does as well. He could be a high-end flex next week.
Yeah, I'm definitely not chasing Tyler Boyd. He wasn't any good last year when Chase or Higgins was out.
No.
And you can't imagine he's going to be good this year with the way that offense is playing. Cole Kmet. Anybody want to make a move for Cole? Like, should the Dallas Goedert manager be looking at Cole Kmet?
If you only have Dallas Goedert and you want to add a second tight end, he should probably be toward the top of the list. I just can't say that what we saw this week is going to happen every week. In fact, it's been a long time since it's been anything like this. But he had 9.4 PPR points in week 1. He's had at least 6 targets, 3 of 4 games this year. If the Bears offense is coming around, if you're buying into that based on what happened in week 4, then you've got to run out and get Cole Kmet. I think there might be some other tight ends that could go ahead of Kmet, but he'll be popular. People are going to pick him up because of this.
I think if you're looking at the next month, and next week's not that great, maybe even bad at Washington, but then the Vikings, the Raiders, the Chargers. That sounds like a 3-week span I could get behind starting Cole Kmet.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And there's some good matchups coming up later. So yeah, I and you have to go pick him up this week because Dave's right. He's going to be really popular in the waiver wire. I'd be okay just go pick him up and say I'm going to start him for the next month and not think about tight end, and we'll come out the other side with maybe 1.5 good games and a couple stinkers. And okay,
yeah. Would you rather have Ferguson from Dallas?
Probably Ferguson.
I would too, but he's only rostered in 5% more leagues than Kmet.
Okay,
they should both be added.
I'll give you one more name, and obviously we have plenty of time to talk about the waiver wire. But Matthew Stafford, it's really. He hasn't played so poorly, but he's getting very few touchdowns. Did he throw one today? Because he had 2 touchdowns.
Yes, the game winner was to Puka Nacua.
Right. That's right. So he has, I think, 3 touchdowns in 4 games. But guess what? Cooper Kupp's on his way back. So if he keeps throwing the ball as much as he is, you might have a start-worthy quarterback.
Just make sure he's got 2 working legs. Because by the end of this game, he may not have had that. He may have only had 1.
Well, yeah, that would be, yeah. We need
You kind of need that.
All right, let's take a look at our winners here. Dave has Jake Ferguson. He has now 7 targets in 3 of 4 games, and he really produced 7 catches on 7 targets for 77 yards. And he's just won the slot machine with all those 7s, Dave. Anyway,
won the slot machine. That's it. That's the saying.
Is that what happens when you get 3 in a row?
They give you the machine.
You get to take the machine home with you.
You have to rent a truck though. You got to use some of the coins in the machine to rent a truck to get the machine to your house.
Wait,
you must have never been to a casino, Adam.
What do they call it when you win while playing slots?
You're lucky. That's what it's called.
All right. Anyway, Jake Ferguson's a winner. Devon Achane, damn it, is a winner. And Jaleel these are Heath's winners. Well, I'm very sorry. Heath.
Yes.
Jake Ferguson, Devon Achane, and Jaleel McLaughlin are your winners.
We've talked about the running backs. Go add McLaughlin. Probably not more than like 15% of your budget, unless you're super duper really, really desperate, because I think he's still going to share and probably be more of a flex rest of season, but he matters. Achane definitely matters. And Ferguson, I was shying away from both Ferguson and Hunter Henry because Dallas and New England historically have been difficult matchups for tight ends, and so far this season had been as well. Ferguson overcame that. Henry was okay, but I think you view Ferguson as a must-start guy. If you go pick him up, you can drop Kyle Pitts or Goddard if that's what you want to do.
Okay. Ferguson's had at least 7 targets in 3 of 4 games. He's had at least 9.8 PPR points in each of his past 3. And eventually he's going to have a game where he has this nice target volume with catches and yards and a touchdown. The exact type of tight end that you want to go and get to have probably as your starter over Pitts and Dallas Goedert for at least a little while.
Listen, we'll get to Dave's new winners in a second. I want to add 2 news items here that I'm just seeing. Actually, 3. Matthew Stafford says he has a hip injury, but he'll play next week. Tre'Davious White is believed to have torn his Achilles.
Oh boy!
So that
it
would be
looked bad when it happened.
Yeah, that would be the second season-ending injury in 3 seasons for the Bills' top cornerback, Tre'Davious White. They have a ton of secondary injuries as well. The Buffalo Bills, another one of their guys left early today, and Jordan Poyer didn't play, so they're really beat up there. But that really sucks for them. That guy's, he at his best, he was a shutdown corner, one of the best in football. And Matthew Judon has a biceps injury to make things even worse for the New England Patriots, maybe their best defensive player. And Christian Gonzalez, another guy. So Christian Gonzalez has been shadowing number 1 receivers, basically, and then more or less shadowing. He left in the first quarter. On the next play, I believe, they threw a 20-yard touchdown pass to CeeDee Lamb. So rough day for the New England Patriots. Okay, also, Dave's winners now. There we go. Nico Collins with timeout. Sorry, Schaefer, different lower third. Back to Heath's winners. I think we have to talk a little bit more about Achane and where you rank him rest of season. I mean, is it easy to put him ahead of Miles Sanders and Ramondre Stevenson, for example?
Yeah. Yes.
I would find it easier to put him ahead of Ramondre. I think either of those guys that you were skeptical about it would be easy to put ahead of. Anybody you had faith in. I'd say he's somewhere between that RB15 and RB20 range rest of season.
I was going to say he's at worst RB20 rest of season, and at best, maybe RB12. I mean, there's a lot to love here about what we are getting. Just insane efficiency, and this is where Heath will say he can't keep it up, and he's right. It's hard to average. What's he averaging this season rushing the ball? It's got to be
probably 15 miles, 15
miles an hour.
All points per carry.
25 miles per hour.
But think about him versus some underwhelming veterans like Joe Mixon.
I was about to say that. Wait, let's close your eyes. You just got your phone just vibrated. You have a notification. Now you can open your eyes. Someone just offered you Joe Mixon for your Devon Achane. Are you clicking accept?
It's Achane, Adam. Achane.
Damn it, Heath. It's Achane. Don't get this in my head.
I think either one's fine. Achane.
Someone just offered you Joe Mixon for your Achane. What are you doing? What are you clicking?
Accept.
You're taking Mixon.
Yeah, I don't think I can do it.
Okay.
Listen, and I don't want to be Mr. Living in the Moment at all, but we are seeing this running back having unbelievable play. It's different when it's against Denver because that defense is terrible, but the Bills defense, that's a step up in competition, and he didn't get a lot of work and he shredded them.
Yeah.
And it's not like their schedule moving forward is a terrible gauntlet. And just look at the Bengals offense and how it's been right now. I think Achane can outscore Mixon. Mixon might have more carries and more touches, but I think Achane can outscore him rest of season.
It's funny. He only had 11 touches today, and he's a huge winner. Okay, sorry. Now, lower third, Dave's winners. Sorry, producer. Nico Collins.
He has a name, you know.
Yeah, well, I forgot it. Terry McLaurin, 8 catches for 86 yards on 10 targets at Philadelphia. The Eagles seem to bring out the best in Terry McLaurin. Gets the Bears next week. And Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs had more receiving yards than rushing yards. Another inefficient rushing game, but 8 catches for 81 yards, which is basically what Terry McLaurin had. Anyway, you talked about Nico. How about, who would you rather have, McLaurin or Nico rest of the season?
I think I'd rather have Nico than McLaurin, but I'm encouraged by McLaurin and what he's been doing lately. And another huge game. He had those catches and yards. He also recovered a fumble for a touchdown. Most leagues should give credit for that. If they're not, double check with your commissioner and find out why, if you're not getting credit for McLaurin's offensive fumble recovery for a touchdown. But that's the Commanders receiver that fantasy managers should be more encouraged to start than Jahan Dotson, who also scored today. Yay. But McLaurin's just getting more work.
Yeah. And Jacobs.
Just no more questions about him. The only concern is he still going to get even a modest target share when Garoppolo's back under center?
Yeah, it's hard not to notice that O'Connell threw basically all the Jacoby Myers targets went to Josh Jacobs today. But yeah, undisputed lead back, still catches passes, either regardless of the quarterback. And now he scored a touchdown. He almost had two or three in this game. So big game for Jacobs. All right, let's go to the losers here. Dave's losers are Kyle Pitts, who we talked about, Miles Sanders, who we talked about, and Jerome Ford, who will go into a bye week and then face San Francisco, Indianapolis, and Seattle. And I think all three of those teams have been pretty good against the run.
They have. And then a week after Seattle, it's Seattle, then Arizona, and then it's the Ravens, the Steelers. Steelers still have a pretty decent run defense. He does get Denver in week 12, so that's good. But I wonder if there's an opportunity to pawn off Ford now if you're running back rich, knowing that he was such a hot waiver claim 2 weeks ago. That the advice might have been better a week ago after he had scored 2 touchdowns, because in this game he was terrible, but you could just turn to people and say, well, of course he's going to be terrible. Deshaun Watson didn't play. I think that there's going to be some rough games ahead for Ford, who's still not seeing more than like 62% of the snaps. I think that's what his number was. Last week it was 60. This Browns offense didn't get inside the 10. You can either throw it out and say, you know what, there was no Deshaun Watson. He'll be back after the bye. And that's when we'll see Jerome Ford take off. But Heath had a great stat about Jerome Ford's inefficiency on Fantasy Football Today this morning on CBS Sports HQ. And that was ringing in my head when I was thinking about Jerome Ford moving forward, is that he's just not going to get a lot of those quality runs. And if that's going to be the case, then he's touchdown dependent and maybe target dependent. I don't know if that's really who he is, though.
What was the stat, Heath?
I 100% stole a stat from you. That's why I was laughing so hard.
Oh, the stat that he had the one run, and then other than that, he's been absolute garbage.
Yes.
He had a 69-yard carry. I tweeted it at the time. I said that could be the best carry of Jerome Ford's career, which wasn't. It was an amazing carry, but yeah, I don't know. He's done nothing since then. When we knew he had this terrible schedule, I'm not like, I don't know. I don't feel like Jerome Ford is going to be useless. He still catches passes. I didn't expect anything from the Browns today when they ruled Deshaun Watson out. Watson will come back. The San Francisco matchup is going to be really tough. Get through that. Just don't lose your job to Kareem Hunt. I feel like Jerome Ford could still be an RB2. Not going to be a league winner or anything like that. But I personally think he could still be an RB2 later in the year. I don't think this is the time to sell him. I think selling a guy coming off a bad game who's been extremely inefficient, going into a bye week, is like you're going to get nothing for Jerome Ford. So I would just hold him personally, and I think he can be a decent bye week replacement, or maybe even a starter for you down the stretch. But I mean, it's obviously he's not like a great player. I think that's.
I think that and I'll just transition here to Michael Pittman, who was one of my losers. But I think that we could maybe say Ford fantasy managers were losers because they didn't sell before this game. Because I think Adam's probably right. You're probably now waiting until after the bye. You hope that he has a good game, and then you try to sell him. It would be hard to sell him for much of anything right now. Adam asked me to make that transition because he needed to turn his TV on because he wanted to make sure he didn't miss any Patrick Mahomes touchdowns. Michael Pittman, Dave, was a big loser for me because I think as much fun as we've had at Adam's expense with Anthony Richardson, and as surprisingly good as Anthony Richardson has been, we recognize there are going to be some bad Richardson games. He's a rookie quarterback. They're not all going to be this spectacular. And I was okay with Pittman having bad games when Richardson has bad games. But if he's going to have a bad game when Richardson has a great game, and he's going to have bad games when Richardson has bad games, then I'm a little bit concerned that maybe I got a little bit over my skis with him as a no doubt about it top 20 wide receiver.
Or was this game just a blip, kind of like the Nico Collins game was in week 3? Because you look at his just the box score from each of the first 3 games, double-digit targets every single game, at least 8 catches every single game. I'm not expecting a ton of touchdowns from Pittman, but I think you can stick with him as a top 24-ish PPR wide receiver.
But we only have 2 games of him with Richardson, and the first one
Richardson left early. Sure.
No, well, that was week 2. But week 1, Pittman had the 39-yard screen pass that went for a touchdown, which is kind of hard to replicate. So yeah, I don't know.
He still had 11 targets.
Even
if you take it away, he had 7 catches for 60 yards, And that might be where he lives. That might be his average is around 13 PPR points. He's got Tennessee next week. I don't think I would be nervous to start Michael Pittman against Tennessee in week 5.
That's a fascinating game. That might be for the lead in the AFC South.
Could be. And then they get Jacksonville after
I don't know
that.
who Jacksonville's playing next week.
2-2.
Jacksonville's got Buffalo in England.
Oh,
So
Yeah.
you're right, Heath.
hopefully a good game. All right, I have a random question before we move on to the next segment of our show. I said this today, and I wonder if you guys agree. Is Taylor Swift the biggest star since Michael Jackson?
At least.
If not, then who?
I was saying like Lady Gaga had a run, but Taylor Swift is destroying that. I don't even know. I mean, is there like a country singer? I mean,
She was the tops of that as well.
it's unbelievable.
No,
I was
she
reading
is.
a great article on CBSSports.com this morning about the impact that it's had on the NFL and how much more popular even the NFL is. And Travis Kelce gained all like hundreds of thousands of followers, and viewership is way up among women in a certain age group. Like, this is amazing. I love it.
Well, that's the thing. It's like I see people, especially in our industry, complaining about it. It's like, are you kidding me?
Don't complain about it.
If 100,000 people start watching and 40% of them play fantasy football, we just grew. Come on.
I'm looking at our chat comments, and a lot of people are chiming in with Beyonce, and I think that's a really good one.
Yeah.
I think about how Eminem was. Like, I'm thinking about artists who were able to sell out massive stadiums.
Right.
Yeah.
And M was able to do that. He's stood the test of time. Those two come to front of my lobe.
I think the difference with her is that she crosses a lot of barriers. There's a lot of, it's a wide audience.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bruno Mars also, I think, deserves a little credit there.
Bruno Mars. Yeah. Basically, Michael Jackson and Beyonce, Taylor Swift, and Bruno Mars. That's what
Bowling
everyone says.
Bruno Mars
Bowling
was
for
huge. Bruno Mars is going to have a hell of a legacy. He'll be people dancing in Bruno Mars songs for decades. All right. News and notes here. Kyler Murray's still several weeks away from playing. Rico Dowdle left in the third quarter. John Dotson left but came back. Chase Claypool was not invited to the game. So that's a pretty bad situation there between Claypool and
he wasn't invited to do his job.
Yeah. So they're hopefully going to trade him. Devontae Adams left in return. Alec Pierce was evaluated for concussion. Juwan Johnson, calf injury. Donald Parham left in the first half.
Prince is a good one.
Prince was like the same time as Michael Jackson, though.
A little bit after, wasn't he?
Well, not really. Like, Jackson really extended into the night. Bruno Mars was a good call by me, by the way. I think you're underestimating Bruno Mars. A lot of offensive line injuries, obviously. Pittsburgh's left tackle Dan Moore left. On defense, another Carolina cornerback out. Another defensive back for the Ravens was out. Another defensive back for the Buccaneers left. Philadelphia right guard Cam Jurgens left. Cleveland center Ethan Posich left. Baltimore Baltimore is the most injured team in the world. Right tackle Morgan Moses left. Houston, another offensive lineman for Houston. Doesn't seem to matter to CJ Stroud. Kendrick Green left with a knee injury. And those are some of the big ones here. All right, let's get to the games here. Let's start recapping them. Jacksonville 23 and Atlanta 7. We start in London. Heath, give me a believe it or not.
Believe it or not, Christian Kirk is the fantasy wide receiver 1 for the Jacksonville Jaguars.
I don't believe it. I think it really comes down to who they play from week to week. And it's a combination of who they play and how well they're able to run the football. And eventually Zay Jones will be back. And I'm worried that he will further water down the targets for everybody there.
Okay, I'm not sure if I believe it or not. I did bring this up on the stream this morning that I was listening to the game, and the broadcasters were talking about how Calvin Ridley struggles with press coverage.
Mm-hmm.
He got shadowed in this game by AJ Terrell, who did a terrific job on him, except the blown coverage on the touchdown. But Ridley apparently struggles with press coverage, which is nothing new. And the Falcons were going to try to take advantage of that, and they did. That's now 2 weeks where he's been shadowed by a cornerback, L'Jarius Sneed and AJ Terrell, and taken out of the game. And that's concerning. You know, I don't know how many great corners are left on their schedule. We don't have to go through it, but he shouldn't be the guy that is getting shut down by AJ Terrell and L'Jarius Sneed. So I'm not going to believe it, Heath, but nervous about it. And meanwhile, you know, we talked about this on Beyond the Box Score, and I thought Trevor Lawrence played really well, but the problem is they can't hit big plays. Their offense does not produce them, and it's killing everyone's fantasy value basically, except I guess for Kirk, who's just catching passes. But I mean, that's the problem right now. They just don't make big plays. So I don't know what's the concern here. What's the level of concern for Jacksonville in general?
I don't really want to start Trevor Lawrence against Buffalo.
No, me either.
I get it.
I think
are we starting Brock Purdy? I don't even know Purdy's playing, but are we starting like
I want to give some credit to Luke Rogers. I went up against Luke in the YOLO Dynasty League, and he started Brock Purdy over Trevor Lawrence correctly today against me.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Well, Purdy's got Dallas on next Sunday night.
Doesn't bother me.
Matters.
Doesn't bother me. You know, Purdy almost had an even bigger game because this was the second time this year, Dave. Sorry, I know we're getting ahead. That he threw a pass to, first it was Debo a few weeks ago. This week it was McCaffrey, and it was ruled a lateral.
That's not a pass.
It was a rushing touch, but it was like a half a yard away from being a pass. Could have easily.
Let's just get this out in the open. You would really like to change the rules of a pass, and like shoveling it forward 6 inches should not be a pass. Throwing it 20 yards behind you should be a pass. Correct?
I'm just saying, Purdy could have. Anyway,
but also Purdy was very close to having a bad fantasy day if they didn't give him that last touchdown on a quarterback sneak.
Yeah,
20 of 21 passing.
Great day.
Is the dude not in a great fit for this offense or what?
All right, Bijan Robinson is amazing.
Yeah.
Anything to say? I mean, you guys talk about Drake London?
No, I think Bijan's the only must start from the Falcons offense until further notice.
Okay.
Yeah. I think Bijan's the second best running back in the NFL right now.
I do think that Jonnu Smith is kind of carving something out. It's a weird thing because why would he be the guy? But 8 targets last week, 6 targets this week, 6 targets in week 2. He's been involved in the offense, and he had a big play. That's really the only difference between this week and last week. But he's getting involved in what they're doing.
All right, let's take a break here. We'll do the rest of the games, and I think we'll be joined by a special guest when we come back on Fantasy Football Today. We're back to talk about Tennessee and Cincinnati.
This should be quick.
Yeah. What do you want to talk about for Tennessee? Heath, go ahead. Give me a believe.
Well, I was going to say Joe Burrow is droppable, but I think we could just go the other direction and say Derrick Henry's fine. You have nothing to be concerned about.
Yeah. I'm a little concerned. I think he had like 1 or 2 nice runs, and then he had a touchdown throw.
Yeah.
Also known as a pass.
The touchdown run was vintage Derrick Henry.
It was, but there were a lot of runs where he looked like vintage Derrick Henry, like 29-year-old Derrick Henry. And we've talked about before, like, what are you going to do the first time Derrick Henry has a big game? Do you feel confident you're just going to keep rolling with him, or do you sell high? Do you try to sell high?
It's a great question. What's your answer? They're Colts, Ravens in a bye week coming up.
Yeah, I mean, those are tough matchups. I still don't necessarily believe that this is a great offense in Tennessee. And even though the offensive line could get a little bit better in the coming weeks, I might try and shop them around if I'm rich at running back.
Hey, Jamie.
Hey, guys.
Hey.
What's up? All right, we're talking Tennessee and Cincinnati here.
Yeah, I'd be selling Derrick Henry if you can.
For Achane?
In a heartbeat.
You'd rather have Achane?
Wow.
I mean, I'd probably expect Achane and something else, but yes, I would. I mean, who knows what
not
the
the offer.
injury is?
That's not the offer. Jamie, close your eyes. Your phone just vibrated. You got an offer. You have Derrick Henry. The Achane managers just offered you Achane straight up for Derrick Henry. There are no other players involved. What button are you clicking?
Yes.
Oh, all right.
Smashing accept.
Listen, yes.
They will be close on the trade chart. So it might not take much with Achane to get Derrick Henry, or vice versa. You might not need to get that much with Achane to give up Derrick Henry.
Who's faster? Just kidding. All right, let's go to our. Well, anyway, a final word on Hopkins. How does Hopkins feel? He led the team in receiving, I think.
It's nice that you're trying to say sweet things about DeAndre Hopkins. They had a flea flicker play in the first half that was designed for Hopkins to catch a long touchdown, and it was well covered.
So last week, Adam, you were praising all the 30-year-old wide receivers. How do you feel about them this week?
Yeah.
What Devontae was good enough.
Devontae was okay. Keenan Allen was not so good.
Scored.
Mike Evans got hurt. Devontae got banged up in the game.
Yeah,
DeAndre Hopkins not doing so great.
Wasn't great. Baltimore 28 and Cleveland 3. Heath.
Believe it or not, none of the Ravens running backs matter.
Believe it.
Yeah, I believe that.
Gus,
Man, just make the trade already. Hey, Indy, here's a second-round pick. Give us Jonathan Taylor. Thank you.
Yep.
Does Indy take the second?
At this point,
Indy,
I would.
close your eyes, Colts. Your phone just vibrated. I have been really neglecting this, but let's just take a second here to talk. Lamar Jackson has been so good, and it looks terrific this year. Jamie, let's give Lamar Jackson some props. I've really failed. It's almost like as an afterthought, but he deserves some credit.
I mean, yeah, look, he hasn't had, I think prior to today, like the high-end games, right? He hasn't had such a standout fantasy game, but he's been consistent. And I think that the promising thing is that we have not seen what we were expected to see, which is the boost in the passing game. Now, you could say the downside of that is it ever going to come? Because what are they waiting for? But if that does start to happen and he continues to give you some rushing production like we're used to, then you're going to be thrilled about what you got in Lamar Jackson. But with, the up and down play that we've had from some of the quarterbacks, and factoring in Jalen Hurts and some of his, inconsistencies and, Joe Burrow and Justin Fields prior to today, to know that you've been getting what you're getting from Lamar Jackson, especially today against a really good Browns defense, with some offensive line concerns. So I don't think you should be upset about what Lamar Jackson's been so far, and hopefully can get to a next level if the receiving core gets healthy and the passing game numbers will follow.
Adam, you'd mentioned this in the preseason about Lamar not having quite the touchdown numbers that he should for as much as he runs. And I saw a number of designed Lamar Jackson rush attempts in the red zone. It was not much more than what we used to see. So he might have a career high in rushing touchdowns pretty soon.
All right. Would you rather, real quick, last question on this game. We'll go to our next game. Would you rather have Zay Flowers or DeAndre Hopkins rest of season?
Zay Flowers.
Zay Flowers.
Flowers.
All right. Denver 31, Chicago 28. Somehow the Bears blow the 21-point lead. Late in the game, they lose. And I thought they did the right thing going for it on fourth down, by the way. But anyway.
How? Why?
Because, I don't know, there was roughly 3-something minutes left. They're pretty deep. They're in field goal range. It's a tie game. The Bears have the ball. It's 4th and 1. I feel like they should have been able to get it. What you don't want to do is kick a field goal. Your defense stinks. You kick a field goal, you give the ball back to the Broncos. There's a good chance they drive down the field and either tie it or score a touchdown. I think you pick up the first down, you try, you run the clock a little bit more, and you win the game. So I think, unlike Brandon Staley.
So I disagree. I actually agree with Brandon Staley and disagree with the Bears. And I think like the Brandon Staley one's been proven. Either one of those the last 2 weeks, if they get it, they win. And as you've seen, they cannot get it and still win.
All right, what's up to leave it out for this game?
I've got 2 of them, but one is the Bears figured things out. Nothing to worry about there anymore. And 2 is Russell Wilson is Russell Wilson.
I don't know what that means. Like old Russell Wilson?
That means he's back to being old Russ.
He's a top 10 fantasy quarterback.
I don't know if I'm ready to say that he's a top 10 fantasy quarterback. He took advantage of a great matchup today, and the metrics going into this week compared to where he was a year ago at this time, he's just much better now. Way better scheme. He seems more comfortable. So I agree with that one. I buy that Russell Wilson. He should be rostered. Like people didn't want to roster him after 3 weeks last year. He should absolutely be on a roster.
I mean, he's ahead
he
of
might
Burrow.
be a good guy to try and trade for.
You're not starting Russell Wilson?
What?
You're not starting Russell Wilson right now?
Depends on who else I have, because he was one of those guys. Right. He was one of those guys that you took late, maybe.
But I mean, he's better than, I'm just thinking the guys who are drafted. He's better than Deshaun. He's better
Yes.
than Prescott. He's better than Burrow.
Yeah.
Lawrence.
Better than Lawrence.
Wait a sec. Okay, hold on. Let's take a game by game look at Russell Wilson. Week 1, he scores 19.2 fantasy points against the Raiders.
Yep.
Week 2, he scores 32 fantasy points against Washington. About 10 of those points came on the last possession, and about 8 of them came on the Hail Mary. Week 3, he scored 16 points against the Dolphins, and week 4, he scored 28 points against the Chicago Bears. I don't want to overrate.
You're also talking about the 16 points against the Dolphins was still a 300-yard day where
he just didn't have the second score.
He didn't have a second touchdown.
Okay, but I don't want to overrate him coming off a Bears game. I think that.
Yeah, but I don't think you're wrong in saying don't overrate him, and he could still be a starting fantasy quarterback. The thing about it is, outside of the elite guys, like who has 4 great games so far?
He doesn't.
No, like I think if you're
Jordan
putting
Love
him
has more.
the way where I would put him in, I'll use Heath's buckets. If you're going to put him in a bucket, he's in the same bucket as like Jordan Love, and I don't know.
Yeah. No, I don't think anyone's
but
arguing that. I think everyone's on the same page then. So,
Is he in the same bucket as Justin Fields?
That's the second, believe it or not.
Right.
No,
I'm trying to move this along for everybody.
yeah, no, I'd rather start Justin Fields.
Yep.
I'm going to be very nervous when Fields has a tough matchup, and I think Thursday at Washington might be one of those tough matchups. But after that, Vikings, Raiders, Chargers, those are going to be good games. He had all day to throw. So, like, Fields having this monster game, if he hadn't have had a monster game, we'd be dropping him because he literally had a huge matchup, the easiest matchup you could ask for. This Broncos defense is going to be great for fantasy, except next week because they play the Jets. So I don't know. I don't even know if the Jets can put up numbers against them.
all right, but what really though is you do have to wonder. I mean, what do you make of this? We have to talk about Justin Fields. First of all, it's a great start of the week. Call was very bold, and he comes through with a huge game. And we also have to talk about Khalil Herbert. Actually, I think a huge winner today that we actually have not mentioned. Herbert had 18 carries and 4 catches and 122 total yards and a touchdown. But yeah, I mean, how much faith do you have in Fields moving forward? Do you still think as Dave seems to think he's matchup dependent? Does anybody think that Justin Fields is back to being a must start guy?
Yes.
I haven't sat him yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we have what? How many teams on a bye next week?
4.
Right. Like,
I don't mean it in that sense. I mean, do you think he's a stud? Do you think the first 3 games were the mirage, or do you think this game's the mirage?
I don't think we've seen the Justin Fields that we're going to see on a consistent basis yet, because you had 2 what I would consider relatively rough road games back to back with the Bucs and the Chiefs, and so he struggled in those games. Like the game that you got against the Packers, to me, that's probably what the floor is going to be, and this is going to be the ceiling. What we saw this week, so 17 points is a bad day, and 30 something as a great day, So I think when he's got, by the time the season's over, like he'll be in that 22 to 25 point range.
Does it bother anybody that he had this monster game while only having 4 carries for 25 yards? And that the staple of what we wanted from Justin Fields when we drafted him was the rushing. He was. Listen, I thought he looked amazing for the first 3 quarters and then kind of struggled a little bit in the fourth. But I part of the reason why everybody drafted him was because he'd be able to wake up every Sunday and get at least 70 yards on the ground. He hasn't done that yet. And so if we're going to ride with Justin Fields, are we riding with him because of his arm? Because his legs aren't doing what we thought that they'd do.
All right, I do have to wrap this conversation up here. Khalil Herbert, rest of season. This is the first, it's something even resembling a good game, basically, for Herbert. So back to being a starter?
Flex.
No. Flex. Bye week replacement. Flex at best.
High end flex. He might be an RB2 some weeks, but high end flex.
Look,
I'd be selling if you can.
Yeah, sure. But here's an example of what his workload will be when the Bears are in a competitive game.
Hope so. Rams 29, Colts 23.
Anthony Richardson is a top 5 quarterback.
Believe it.
I don't believe it.
All right, Adam,
Mahomes, Allen,
Hurts.
Hurts.
Who, by the way, does
Tua?
not even have a 40-yard rushing game yet. Jalen Hurts.
You got to put Cousins still as a top 5 quarterback.
No, I don't know. Cousins, this was such
really? One game is going to do it to you?
I would not. If you tell me I have Anthony Richardson and Kirk Cousins on my team, I am starting Anthony Richardson every week.
Well, I don't know about starting him every week. I mean, you could definitely play the matchups there with those two.
You need to trade.
Yeah,
I'd
have
drive yourself crazy.
Yeah.
Lamar maybe still.
The big three.
Rich.
I'd rather have Lamar Jackson than Richard. Did you say that?
I would too.
Okay. So that's
He's
4.
not top 5.
Well, I don't know. 5. Who's the 5th? It's not Burrow. Can't say Lawrence.
Can't say Herbert.
You say Tua.
Tua.
You could say Tua or Herbert, but that we'll have a believe it or not on the Dolphins offense.
What has Richardson done in the 3 games that we've seen him to make him not feel like this?
He was a top 12 quarterback per game coming into this game, and one of the 2 games he played 1 quarter.
Yeah. Okay, what else from this game?
Adam's gonna die on that hill.
No, I'm not.
I think top 5 is a little too high.
I'm off the hill. I'm not trashing Richardson at all. I was wrong. That's it. It's over. And what else from this game? That's fine. Puka was great. Like, we'll have time to talk about those guys after.
We got to talk about Zach Moss at some point. What you do with him now?
All right, yeah. Jonathan Taylor is eligible to come back now. Moss had 18 carries. He did not have a target. He did not have a catch. He only had 1 target, which is interesting. You know, what's that going to look like with Richardson? How much is he going to throw to his running backs? But all right, go ahead, Dave. Talk about Zach Moss.
You don't know what's going to happen if Taylor's like in the good graces of the Colts, and they agree to some sort of extension or just an agreement for the rest of this year. It's going to be a lot of Jonathan Taylor and very little of Zach Moss, and Moss will be a handcuff. But we don't know what's going to happen. It's a gamble if you trade for him, and you shouldn't have to give up that much to trade for him, because there's still the chance that Taylor gets traded and Moss is the lead back rest of season. We just don't know.
We've not heard anything suggesting that Jonathan Taylor's changed his stance about playing for the Colts, right?
No, in fact, I read on I think ESPN that his stance remains steadfast, that he does not want to play for the Colts, but not that to say that they're going to trade him, but that I read that it has not changed. In fact,
I believe Jay Glazer reported on Fox's pregame show today that the Colts have not received any trade offers, and they are ramping him up to play. Whether he is in agreement with that is a different story, but that's what the Colts, I think, are hoping to do.
All right, let's move on here. Go to our next game. Just easy to forget how good Jonathan Taylor was. He was like, yeah, I know, that was pretty sick. He was like Bruno Mars back in the day. You know what I mean? All right, Buffalo 48, Miami 20. What's our believe it or not on the Dolphins offense? And Heath and I are reacting to the Isaiah Pacheco run. That was sick.
Yes.
Buffalo 48, Miami 20.
Believe it or not, the Dolphins offense is mid without Teron Armstead.
Just okay. I don't believe it.
How much has Armstead played this year? Was this his first game or second game?
I think it was.
He played last week.
Yeah, they were
in
great
week 2.
Week 1. Let me check.
Did they score? Week 1 or week 2?
Did they score after he went out of this game?
I'm not sure.
I don't know.
I think they did. I can double check if they did.
He only played week 3.
My notes. I watched this one.
The Dolphins get their slump buster next week.
Oh, come on, Jamie. That's not cool, man. Giants in Miami on a short week next week. Yeah, they're gonna light them up. All right, so we said that Devon Achane is at worst a top 20 running back. Raheem Mostert is what going forward, guys?
Same.
I think he's more in the Khalil Herbert range.
Can I say that James Cook has not scored a touchdown? That James Cook still has a touchdown problem because the touchdown he scored today really shouldn't have been a touchdown and they should have overturned it. But alas, they did.
They were intentional about getting him that score.
Right.
Like it was obvious. It was let's get James Cook a touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
All right, what the hell do we do with Gabe Davis? You're gonna get 3 to 4 targets every week and catch a touchdown? Come on.
Sounds a lot like Gabe Davis.
Yeah. You start him anytime you think Josh Allen's going to explode. That might be most weeks. That's what he does, but it's certainly a boom bust type of flex play, which is what he's always been.
I don't know how many more times. I'm going to guess there's probably a few that Nance and Romo are calling the games. They alluded to this on the broadcast that every time they have a Buffalo game, Gabe Davis does something great.
Ooh.
So keep that in mind, that maybe he's a primetime player.
Minnesota 21, Carolina 13. Carolina had the ball for almost 39 minutes in this game.
So we talked that.
Give me Vikings running backs.
Yeah, believe it or not, Cam Akers is a non-factor.
Oh, no, I don't believe it.
Let me set up the stats real quick here. Madison had 17 carries and 1 catch. Akers had 5 carries in this game. Madison had another solid game, 98 total yards. All right, so believe it or not, Cam Akers is a non-factor.
Don't believe it. He will be a factor at some point.
At some point, yes, but I think right now you should feel comfortable starting Madison as a number 2 running back.
1 target for Jordan Addison. Just chalk it up. I mean, look, Cousins, what did he throw? He threw 19
passes, and like you said, they barely had the ball.
Yeah. All right, so just kind of chalk it up to a bad week.
Yes.
For everybody but Madison and Jefferson.
Would you rather have Adam Thielen or Jordan Addison rest of season?
Addison.
That's a great question. I probably lean toward Addison because of Thielen's age and quarterback, but Thielen's looked good. He really has.
He has. Yep.
Yeah. 7 catches, 76 yards on 8 targets for Thielen, who has started in 62% of leagues. Houston 30, Pittsburgh 6.
The Steelers do not have one offensive player you can start.
Not yet. But man, A, Deontay Johnson needs to come back quickly. And B, they need to fire Matt Canada, which sounds like they might be doing.
For what it's worth, Deontay Johnson was a million times better with Mitchell Trubisky last year than he was with Kenny Pickett.
That's
so. Is Pickett done?
No, I don't know.
We don't
4
know.
to 6 weeks is what I'd seen, but it was speculation.
Yeah, no, you can't trust anyone right now for sure. And it's weird. It's like, I mean, what the thing is with Najee, he's got what did he have? 19 carries last week, 14 this week.
Mm-hmm. He totaled over 100 yards this week. He's actually had a bunch of runs now. I think it's like 3 games in a row where he's actually looked decent.
Yeah.
So it's maybe, I don't know if it's necessarily more consistent. It's worth a review.
Let's have some fun and talk about CJ Stroud here.
He's
68%
awesome.
roster, Jamie. 25 or more fantasy, or 24.6 or more in 3 straight games. He's been right around 25 all 3 of those games, but very impressive stuff.
His receiving core is doing great things for him too. And, despite the fact that the offensive line is a mess from an injury standpoint, it hasn't impacted him. No interceptions to start his career. I think it's, I saw today, like most completions without an interception to start an NFL career. So wow. He's on fire. And, I think anybody in Dynasty that drafted him is going to be pretty thrilled about that. Texans seem to have found their guy. And he's made Nico Collins into the 3rd-year breakout that I was expecting him to be. He's gotten 2 great games so far to Tank Dell. Today was disappointing, but, I wouldn't necessarily be, panicked about that. And so, hopefully Dameon Pierce gets going to give this team a little bit of a run game, but they're in it. I mean, you can make a case they're the best team in the AFC South at this point, especially once they get a little bit healthier on the offensive line. So yeah, I love what I see from CJ Stroud right now.
They're 2-2. They just punched the Steelers in the mouth, and I think they're realizing, and we talked about this 2 weeks ago, that eventually they would whittle down their 3 running backs down to 2, and that's really what happened. Pierce played 58% of the snaps, season high, 3 of 6 snaps inside the 10. Singletary was up next, 36% of the snaps. Played a little bit more on 3rd and 4th downs. Mike Boone played, but he only played 6% of the snaps. So they're starting to lean into Dameon Pierce even more. When that offensive line gets healthy, and CJ Stroud's already established himself as a great thrower, you're going to see some great games from Dameon Pierce.
Back-to-back game with no sacks, too. That's crazy.
That's insane.
And Pierce, by the way, had a touchdown catch, about a 5-yard touchdown catch called back on a penalty.
Yeah, that was good for Nico Collins.
Right. Did end up with a Nico Collins.
Did they have like 3 touchdowns in a row, 2 callbacks?
Yes.
It was a wild sequence, yeah. Tampa Bay 26, New Orleans 9, Heath.
I think I'm going to go back to the Chris Olave one because it is interesting. You should ignore Derek Carr's shoulder, ignore Alvin Kamara's impact, ignore the matchup at Foxborough, and still start Chris Olave next week.
Well, are we getting the Patriots without Matt Judon and Christian Gonzalez? Because I might, but
no Matt Judon.
I definitely think that Carr's shoulder has to be a serious concern.
They need to sit him.
Yeah. And if they do, it's Jameis. Jameis's only throw was intercepted on a deep lob.
Yeah, I gotta say, we gotta check the weather in case it's unusually cold in Foxborough for Derek Carr. Because
I hadn't thought about that for a while.
It's sweatshirt weather for me, so you know. All right, Chris Godwin has a huge game here. 8 catches, 114 yards, and 88 of those yards came in the last 13 minutes of the game. And that was all without Mike Evans. So I guess my question is, do you go back to Chris Godwin? They do have a bye coming up, so this is a silly question. But if Evans has a multi-week absence, do you only consider Godwin a start if Evans is out?
In the immediate future, yes.
You might not have that option, though, because we're getting into the bye week starting next week. So you obviously next week you can't use them, but then there's going to be weeks ahead where there's going to be other receivers missing. You're not going to have a choice but to start Chris Godwin, whether Evans is there or not.
Miguel is keeping track in our chat of all the Taylor Swift camera shots.
I set the over-under this morning, more Taylor Swift or Aaron Rodgers. And I think that was answered when Pacheco had a rushing touchdown and they immediately went to Taylor Swift. Yeah, like if they're going to Taylor Swift after the Pacheco touchdown, then it's going to be Taylor Swift.
All right, let's go to our next game. Philadelphia. This was a heck of a game. Washington really plays the Eagles tough. They lost in overtime by 3. Philadelphia 34, Washington 31.
Brian Robinson is a must-start running back for at least the next 3 weeks. The Bears at home, at Atlanta, at the Giants.
Yep. And maybe even 4 weeks because it gets Philadelphia again in week number 8.
Oh yeah, I think you're right on that. Chicago, Atlanta. Well, I give credit to Atlanta. Their defense is not bad, but those will be competitive games.
Yes, that's the point. And Chicago's defense it's still so bad.
I mean,
Robinson's a must next week.
What's the difference between Brian Robinson and Dameon Pierce? Who's better rest of season?
Pierce.
Rest of season, I would take Pierce. I mean, this wasn't a great game for Robinson. I know he should have had 2 touchdowns, but it's not like he ran the ball well.
Played a lot, scored a couple of catches. I almost think that's what you're going to get from him. But when you've got a plus matchup, you're going to love him. 54% of the snaps. That feels like a season low.
It's also game script, as we said.
Yeah. I was worried that they'd get blown out. And they
right. That's why we were nervous about starting Robinson.
All right. On the other side, we already talked about Goddard, Hurts. It is weird that Hurts has not had a 40-yard rushing game yet. DeAndre Swift is the guy, and he scored a touchdown. That was great, and he had 4 catches. He was started 95% of leagues, so keep starting him.
Season high 4 catches for Swift.
Chargers 24, Vegas 17.
I think this is probably an important one. You need to hold Quentin Johnson over his bye.
Again, let me set it up. Quentin Johnston had, because we have stats in front of us for those of you listening at home or wherever, 1 catch for 18 yards on 3 targets in a pretty quiet day. Only 167 passing yards and 24 attempts for Justin Herbert. But a terrible game for Quentin Johnston. So it is a good one, Heath. Believe it or not, guys, you need to hold Johnston 69% rostered through his bye.
I don't believe it. I don't think it's a must.
You have 2 things here. One, I don't know how many people are running to pick up Quentin Johnston in a redraft league after the game he just had. You have Austin Eckler coming back after their bye week, and that's another mouth to feed. That's going to be a much bigger upgrade over what the running backs have been, certainly in the passing game. So I think it's going to be a while before we see the best of Quentin Johnston.
Okay. All right. I'm good there. Jacobs talked about. Yeah, let's go to our next game. San Francisco 35, Arizona 16.
Believe it or not, we totally flubbed it and forgot Michael Wilson when we were talking about the early waiver wire.
Yeah, probably.
He had 7 catches for 76 yards and 2 touchdowns. I don't think I'm going to pick him up.
He's a must-add player.
You think so?
Yes.
Drop Quentin Johnston, add Michael Wilson?
Yes.
What do you like about him?
We were calling Quentin Johnston a must-add player. Well,
we were saying that Josh Palmer would be the better of the two early, and that Quentin Johnston would be somebody that you want to have on your team just to see what happens. And we saw a game of what could happen, and now he's on his bye week. Josh Dobbs is playing well. I don't want to discount what he's done for the role that he's been put into on what we thought was going to be an awful team. They're not an awful team. I know they got hammered by San Francisco. They're going to do that to a lot of teams. They were in this game. The fact that they cut it to 21-16 at one point was extremely impressive. And so I think right now what you're seeing is, somebody else is going to have games where there's going to be a second pass catcher on his team. Zach Ertz should have caught a touchdown, by the way, at the end, which would have covered the spread for anybody that took Arizona the points. In any event, I think we're just seeing an offense that's developing and improving, and a young player that might be their best receiver by next season.
And hats off to Marquise Brown. He's had 3 good games in a row too.
I said that to Dave, and as we're watching the game, I'm like, he's had a very quiet, good season for him.
32% started, so I think that's going to have to change. They don't have a bye, by the way, until I think week 13.
Week 14.
Week 14, right.
Arizona and Washington, the two teams that have a bye and a potential fantasy playoff week.
Okay, and that's going to be it for that.
News on Javonte Williams. He's not expected to miss much time, if any.
Okay. Actually, let's talk about real quick Brandon Ayuk. It's like, if you look at week 2, let's see if they go to Taylor. Get a Taylor Swift shot here? Let me know. Week 2, he didn't play much. Yeah, Chiefs scored again. And I was so sidetracked here. Anyway, I was going to say, combine week 1 and week 4 for Brandon Ayuk. And it's 14 catches, 277 yards or something like that, and 2 touchdowns. But it's 14 catches on 14 targets. So I don't know what you can expect from Brandon Ayuk, but he doesn't get enough targets for this kind of production. He must be number 1 in yards per target. Anyway, it's like sell or hold. Buy, sell, hold Ayuk.
Buy.
I'll say hold.
You had a Deebo Samuel injury already coming into this week. If he misses any time, my goodness.
By the way, what was Deebo's snap count? Because he did not have a target in this game.
He had 3 carries.
Yeah, I started him. Telling me that when
he played 46 of 53 snaps.
What? And didn't have a target?
Decoy Samuel.
All right, Dallas 38, New England 3. Our last game, Heath.
Matthew Judon, according to Schefter, is going to be sidelined. They just don't know how long yet. He suffered a lower bicep tendon tear.
That could be a year-ender.
Oh. Dak Prescott is droppable in 1 quarterback leagues.
Nope, don't believe it.
I believe it.
At San Francisco next week.
I'd rather have CJ Stroud.
I don't believe it.
As a matter of fact, I did that exact thing today.
I don't feel like Dak is playing poorly. Just feel like the fantasy
doesn't have to be playing poorly to be a good fantasy quarterback.
Yeah. Another quiet, nice game for Michael Gallup. He had 5 catches for 60 yards, coming off a 92-yard performance. He's 15% rostered. We talked about Ferguson. Disappointing game for Pollard, but no big deal there. And the Patriots stink. And
bad.
Mondre is terrible.
Do you want to see Bailey Zappi? Would that change anything for you for Stevenson?
Do I want to see Bailey Zappi? Yes, I don't want to see Mac Jones anymore.
I don't think anything's going to improve things for Stevenson.
Right.
Okay.
Dave, did you get any offers on your Zeke on the block today?
Not one. That's what happens when you put a player on the block 10 minutes before the game starts.
I think you could have done it 10 weeks ago and nobody would have made a trade.
Yeah, probably.
Wait a second. If you're gonna poke fun at Dave for that, let's talk about the trade you offered Dave in that league, because that was such an Azer trade. They're no longer called Azer trades. They're now Jamie trades. Dave,
trades.
What was the trade Jamie offered?
I don't even remember. I know that it was Jordan Love and
Breece Hall for
Aaron Jones and Joe Burrow.
And I believe Jordan Love outscored both Aaron Jones and Joe Burrow. So you could make fun of that trade all you want to.
That was funny. That was the thought of trading for Burrow at that point. But now
I will say, and this is my favorite Jamie story ever in the league that I thankfully no longer participate in. I think it was my second year at CBS, and Jamie made a trade so lopsided that somebody threatened to quit the league. He traded Devontae Freeman after week 1 or week 2 for Jamal Charles in a huge package deal. And Devontae Freeman finished the year as RB1, and Jamal Charles, I think, played one more game. It was
100%.
That's awesome. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Great show tonight. We'll talk to you all tomorrow with Beyond the Box Score. Have a great evening, or if you're listening in the morning, have a wonderful Monday, and we'll talk to you soon.